Now that we have been reacquainted with exponents, let's go explore a bit. Let's look at 3 to the 4th times 3 to the 3rd. Now let's go back to the definition. If it says 3 to the 4th, we know that really means 3 times 3 times 3 times 3, and that value is multiplying 3 to the 3rd, which means times 3 times 3 times 3. And if you notice, all of these values are multiplying, so no grouping symbols are even necessary. What we're really looking at is 3 times 3 times 3 times 3 times 3 times 3 times 3. Whew, I know that's a lot of threes. But if you notice, it is a lot of threes. All of the values are 3, and because it is repeated multiplication, we can write it with an exponent. The number that's repeated is 3, so that is our base. But how many times is it listed? Well, if you notice, 3 is timesing itself 7 times. Now that was an example involving numbers. Let's explore with some variables. In this case, we're going to look at x squared times x to the 4th. Like before, we go back to the definition of exponents to make sure we really understand what is going on. X squared really means x times x, and that value is timesing x to the 4th, which means it's multiplying x times x times x times x. Since all of these values are multiplying, there's no grouping symbols necessary to distinguish which one's part of the x squared and which one's part of the x to the 4th. Instead, we just have a bunch of x values multiplying. Now, because it's the same value multiplying itself, that means we can turn it into an exponent. Because x is repeated, that is the base. In this example, how many times is x multiplying itself? 6 times. Now, surely there has to be a quicker way to get from the original problem to the simplified answer. Take a moment now to pause the video and see if you can find a pattern. All right, let's see. What you notice is we stumbled upon what's known as the product rule for exponents. The rule states, if m and n are positive integers and a is a real number, then a raised to the power of m times a to the power of n equals a to the power of m plus n. In other words, if you have two values that have the same base raised to powers, you keep the base and add the exponents. Next, we're going to look at some examples.